So how could I not know about this? And not only not know about this, but literally stumble upon it as a recommendation. Fritz, are you getting in on the Alien RPG? What do you mean there's an Alien RPG? Certainly if you've been following some of my board gaming videos, you know that there are certain two very, very important franchises that I love playing on the board game perspective. I love the movies. I love the video games and the computer games. Aliens versus Predator. The chance to play a colonial marine or something, some sort of corporate suit, and literally do battle against the aliens. The chance to recast fate against the engineers, to play in that universe. I love playing in that universe. I love Aliens versus Predator, The Hunt Begins, that type of board game. Absolutely fantastic. On a side note, also pushed up to my archive, Conan. I love the Conan IP, and Conan the board game is a fantastic, fantastic experience. Now, I'm also big into role-playing games, massive into role-playing games, and Wargamer Fritz has his genesis in role-playing games, starting with D&D, and that led to miniatures, playing with miniatures, and that led to going to Dragon's Den on Central Avenue and finding out one day as we're looking at miniatures to populate and paint a dungeon, my buddy's like, hey, check this out. Fritz, orcs with guns. And I'm like, orcs with guns? Orcs cannot have guns. That's just weird. And next thing you know, we see the cover of Warhammer 40K, Space Marines, Draken's Last Stand with the Imperial Fists. And that's pretty much a wrap. And here we are many, many years later. But I really enjoy playing role-playing games. And D&D has had a massive influence. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, massive influence. Paranoia, from time to time. Love playing that. And Invisible Sun. Been playing a lot of Invisible Sun recently. Very, very unique system. But Alien, how could I not know about this? So, of course, it seems to be somewhat out of print in various places right now. So I will be looking for when it restocks. But what intrigued me, I have to say what intrigued me, yes, the narrative I'm sold. If it's a halfway decent, halfway usable system, I'm in. And I find myself more and more, it's interesting, the more streamlined D&D becomes, the more complex, almost like an MMO, it's becoming. And years ago, I certainly played Rolemaster. I wouldn't consider it a primary system or one that I spent a lot of time playing. But I remember it was very, very complex, very, very detailed. The combat was very detailed. And I find myself more and more looking for simplicity, not in the sense of it being easy or just slapdash something together for a design perspective, but the elegance of simplicity. And I was intrigued by the core system in Alien, separating from the narrative of you have some skills and you roll a number of D6, and depending on the skills, 6 is a success. So you need 2 or 3 successes. You roll a bunch of D6 based on your skill points. It's kind of an interesting pass or fail. That seems simplistic, but it flows and it works. And I like the idea that the focus of the game is on the narrative and pushing the story forward and not keeping track of like ammo and all the little things that maybe your character can and can't do. I'm also intrigued by the insanity / horror / panic of it, where depending on what's going on, you're also challenged to roll D6s, and on ones, that's going to work against you, maybe even causing you to panic and flip out. And there's been a little bit of back and forth online that I've been reading where, certainly from the perspective of a game master, I don't want to railroad players. I don't want to say, well, you're scared, you're terrified, you can't act, you can't do anything. That seems to be bad game design. But we have that in D&D. It's called a saving throw. You failed your saving throw, and now you're paralyzed. So having characters react in ways that the players aren't intended, that's nothing new. But the fact that the dice get stacked with a 1, that kind of intrigued me. And it kind of really put it out there where if you are going head-to-head, toe-to-toe with an alien, even if you're a colonial marine, this is some serious stuff. You're going to be really, really messed up with what you're seeing and what you're dealing with, the survival horror. So it really intrigues me as a very elegant survival horror system dumped into the alien world. Very, very intrigued. The other piece that I saw was kind of interesting. I'm looking online a little bit more before this podcast, and I'm sure after this podcast, and also your recommendations. 2 modes of play: campaign mode and action mode. Campaign mode is just like standard D&D. We have a long campaign, 5 or 6 adventures, 7 adventures. You're running through, you're developing your character. And then this kind of adventure mode where cinematic play, they call it, where you're fighting the alien, or chances are your character's not going to survive. We kind of have that in D&D. It's called a one-off. Show up with a level 5 character, and we're going to run a quick level 5 adventure. You might survive, you might not survive. But what intrigued me was the fact that if it's an elegant system and it plays fast, and I can play in being realistic, 3, 4, 5 hours, that's like a standard Battletech session. 5 hours of gaming is a Battletech session, right? In a good session, if we can get some alien survival horror, like, if your cryopods wake up and you're out of cryo sleep and you're looking out the window and you're like, where's Titan? Where are the moons of Saturn? Like, we're supposed to be, 2 or 3 days out from Earth, and we're in the middle of nowhere. And then stuff just starts going down, right? Your buddy, the cryo tube next to you, is we don't know where he is. He's gone. Just stuff going down. First thing that happens in anything like that, like, I have to say, it was funny. We did play kind of a sci-fi GURPS type game. GURPS was a very interesting system where you had a set of rules and you can really fit it to anything. And this was a little while ago. A buddy was running kind of an alien type game. We knew we were going to be fighting an alien in the Alien franchise, and we just knew it, obviously. So we go to cryo sleep, and we were playing a character. It was the idea was to play a character much like you envision yourself that you could be in another universe. So, from the perspective of, I'm not going to be like Superman, or I'm not going to be Batman, but much like in real life, I could be a little bit paranoid. I could be a little bit on edge. So knowing that and having a little bit of meta knowledge that my buddy was going to run this, we go to sleep in our cryo tubes, and before we go to sleep, I'm like fully armed. I'm fully armed. I wasn't a colonial marine. I think we were just like security on whatever deep space mining ship. And I've got like a pistol, a billy club, and a boot knife. And I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm going in cryo sleep and waking up and stuff's going down and I'm not armed. We don't have time to go. And I'm not even Texan, right? We don't even have time to like take care of that. I'm going to cryo sleep, fully armed, fully ready on there. Very, very intriguing. Very, very intriguing, where from the perspective of a game master looking at the presentation of this cinematic play, where you could just throw the players into the action. Just, here you go, thrown in. I'm intrigued by that. Especially if we're playing in like kind of a darkened room with maybe some background sci-fi type space music going on. I mean, a lot of possibilities. Does Fritz need another RPG? Absolutely not. But this is Aliens. This is a chance to really play in that sandbox. Extremely, extremely intrigued.